Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. Although one of our esteemed guests, Polina, is not here. She got delayed in traffic jam. And so we'll just start without her, and we will be expecting her to join us as soon as possible. Well, we have a youth panel today. Youth has very often been the hope of many, especially those who lost the hope in the current generation. And it was also one of the great hopes of Václav Havel. I remember that he was always hoping for this new generation to be washed away by a new generation of educated people in the Western, liberal, democratic sort of an education, people who do not share bad habits from communism, people who are not inflected by something that has destroyed half of Germany. If you take a look as a sociological sort of insight, one Germany which had the same culture, same politics, everything, artificially divided in the middle. And till today you can see that the Eastern Germany has a different opinion from the Western Germany, and you can see the most tragic differences between North Korea and South Korea, of course, again being the same nation, but one simply are educated in truly believing that their leader is the best of the best of the best. So this is our topic of today. People tend to be much happier in totalitarian regimes than in democracy. We have here among us two plus one, invisible, but her spirit, I believe, is with us. Young leaders. And I will be asking you the same questions. We also have with us most, we used to be young, but a little bit ahead of us, which is a great honor to have you. And so this will also create a nice little tension. So I will start with Karel Schwarzenberg, being, of course, one of the key people around Václav Havel, one of the key people in putting this republic back on its feet. And also ex-leader of a political party and a presidential candidate, and a hope of many young people. So, Mr. Schwarzenberg, welcome, and thank you that you're here with us.
Well, it is really an interesting theme, because two things I would like to tell you at the beginning to explain why I have my doubts. One thing, we had now provincial elections, Senate elections here, but the sad result was that really very few people went to vote. And a very well-known journalist told me that he was observing it, and only people over 40 mostly went to vote. Young people not. One thing. Second, since the 19th century, 20th of the 19th century, with the famous students then of Leipzig in Germany, then another principle, always changes, revolutions started with the students' movement. It was throughout the 19th century, in whole Europe, Spain, France, Italy, Germany, Austria-Hungary. It went through the 20th century, and actually the great students' movement in Western and partly Eastern Europe was 68, but the changes in the year 89, 90 in Central and Eastern Europe wouldn't have been possible without the students who got moving. And experience told us that historically, that as a rule, after a quarter of a century, when the new established regime becomes an old one and shows all signs of senility and loss of elasticity and not corresponding to the needs of the time, the students started to move. It ended sometimes in reform, sometimes in revolution, but there were changes. And the interesting thing is we have now these famous 25 years behind us after big changes in Europe in 89-90, which were, of course, more Central and Eastern Europe. And we see crisis developments throughout Europe. We have a crisis in the European Union with the banking crisis and so on. But there is no new students' movement. It's the first time since 220 years in history that students evidently concentrating on studies on their vacation of traveling throughout the world, but didn't engage. There are, of course, very engaged students still today. Thanks God I met during my campaigns, some of them here, some appeared later, like my neighbors to the right, and I see some in Germany and Austria and other countries in the United States. But it's very funny, even in the United States, who remembers in the 60s the big students movement, Kent and so on, who changed the United States? And there's nothing like that in present Europe. And I do think it's, in spite of being rather conservative personally, that is not a good development. Because, as I see, I'm a typical example for it. Politicians stay too long in politics instead of being exchanged, but nobody pushes. A politician, of course, if he can, stays for all eternity on his fauteuil or in his bench in the parliament. But then they have the chances because nobody is pushing them out, which would be a healthy development. So I think that's the question why it's reasonable to have this panel, and I hope to get from a neighbor and from our Venezuelan and Russian friend answers. Maybe in Venezuela the students are moving. In Russia, only partly, as far as I'm informed. The development in Russia is rather quiet too. So why we have such a peaceful and uninterested younger generation? That's the question.
That is a very good question for the three young people that we have here. We have two opposition activists, if I may. One from Venezuela, Jesús, welcome here, and one from our almost neighboring Russia, Polina Nemirovskaia, thank you also to you, and a Czech representative who has won the competition for the best leader in an international Czech organization called People in Need. It doesn't say nothing about the Czech Republic, it's just a name. So, what do you think of the question that was asked? We had generations of hippies, we had generations of people who believed in punk or in anarchy, or it was always very strong political energy in youth, always revolting against the older ones. Now we have hipsters. And hipsters, this is a very interesting kind of group for me to understand, but it seems to be more of a fashion thingy rather than a political movement or youth movement in the traditional meaning of the word. So how do you reflect on that? Is the young generation lost, or is there still some energy? That's a question number one. And once we're done with this, I would also like to ask you which force in the world is now having the upper hand. Is it the liberal democracy, freedom and openness seeking part of the world, which is often connected with the West? Or is the upper hand getting by populist, by quasi-totalitarian regimes of the Putin type? So is the West becoming more East, or is the East becoming more West? That's the second question. That's in the next round of answers. So my first question is, what do you as a young person think of your age group? Is it lazy? Is it not angry enough? Is it content? Is it happy? Does it have irrelevant problems? Is it already so detached from the real world in the digital world that national politics no longer matter to it?
Okay.
Do you want to start, Jesus?
Okay.
All right.
Well, Thomas, let me tell you about my experience. I'm part of a generation of young people in Venezuela who rebelled against the government totalitarian intentions to deplete the freedom of speech in 2007. That made students all across the country went to the streets, organize and motivate with the goal to stop Hugo Chavez from closing the most important TV private station in the country. After many demonstrations, we didn't achieve our goal, but some months later, we led a campaign that generates the only one electoral defeat of Hugo Chavez. We defeat the former president of a referendum in an attempt to reform the constitution to legalize the communal system and the infinite re-election, among other mechanisms, depend state control over citizens, to eliminate democracy as we know it. And I can tell you that the young people in Venezuela are eager enough to take the responsibility. Are eager enough to take responsibility. They are in the street, they are working on politics, they are fighting against the government, they are fighting against this dictatorship, and we are really organized to make changes in Venezuela and maybe to impact in all the region. We want to transcend Venezuela and to be leaders in all Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you. So in your case, the answer is yes, people.
Yes, of course.
There is a lot of energy in youth.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. What about you, Polina? How do you view it?
As someone at the age of 20, of course, I don't think myself to be lost, and I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of young people while we were campaigning this summer for State Duma, and the goal of our campaign was to involve young people into politics, because we didn't hire people who were like over 27. And the oldest person on our campaign was our candidate, Maria Baronova. And so we've happened to meet a lot of new people because we had to collect signatures, and that is why we had more than 400 people volunteering for us. And I've happened to talk to a lot of them, and those are people who really care about what's going to happen with our country. But of course, Russian people are very, very traumatized by everything that happened in the last 20 years, because everybody was waiting for democracy and pluralism and, I don't know, some liberal heaven, which haven't happened. And for the last 17 years of Putin's regime, it's just all about the lies and all about something which is expected, but something that doesn't happen. And so young people want to become involved, but they don't believe anyone. They don't believe Putin, they don't believe the opposition. And our goal was to convince them that they could actually change something. And I think we succeeded, because we are staying with a lot of those people after the campaign and working together. And what is more interesting is the categories that are not even students, people under 16. I've met a girl in Russia, a model, and she's very popular between people who are like from 12 to 16, and she was very politically involved, and she cares so much about the politics. And she was making polls on her Twitter where she has like 16,000 followers, and those polls said that many, like 80% of her followers, who are all very young, really care very much about laws that are incorporated in Russia, and mostly about law that allows the government to know where you are and what you text in and so on and so on. And there are really a lot of those people, and we're one of the first political movement in the opposition who tries to reach them. So I can't tell you about the results yet because it's too early, but we're trying to find a language with those people. And if we do, I think Putin's regime will be very scared of us.
Okay, good for that. Well, fingers crossed. Let me remind our online viewers that there is an opportunity, and also for you, if you're on Facebook, to join the debate with questions via Facebook. So, what is your view? How are the Czech students that are actually living in some sort of open society, how are they to be active? Is it possible to activate them?
I think that in a lot of points I agree with my colleagues, but I think that in the case of Czech Republic it's a really big problem that we don't have a leader or leaders. I think that we don't have a leaders in families, in schools, and in political parties. And I think that when we found someone who is not egoist, who don't think that everything is store, who don't misapplies migration cases and so on, I think that when we have a good leader, we can be politically active. I think that young people are active through the Facebook or so on, but they don't know that to be active means be active in politics. And I think that we have to talk with young people and say young people that they are important group for us and that they can change something and that they want to be not active only in everyday life but in politics too. I think that when we talk with young people and say you are important for us and we need you to be active in politics, it's a good way.
All right, so let's turn to the second question, if I may, if it's an interesting question, is what's happening to the world, because there is so many coincidences going on at the same time. All of the leaders that are sort of populist and anti-EU are also at the same time pro-Putin. It's sort of a coincidence, and you have them rising not only in America, not only in Czech Republic, not only in the Visegrad group, but in other countries such as Le Pen. They all share a fascination towards quasi-democratic regimes of the Putin style. You do have elections. Let me remind you that we here also had elections, even during the communist regimes. On paper, everybody did go to elections. And it seems a little bit that the West is going to this sort of way of leadership. Let's call it the Eastern, more strong hand leadership. So, is the West becoming East, or is the East becoming West?
Neither nor, I would say. Neither nor. But I do think we have a decay of the traditional democratic parties which were established in the 19th century. I mean, first the liberals and soon after the Christians and Social Democrats. And actually, the recipes are finished. They became so similar to each other that in most European countries you could exchange the leading politicians of so-called left and so-called right without really realizing what the difference. In Europe, European journalists call, for instance, the German Chancellor, Mrs. Merkel, the best social democratic Prime Minister of Europe. So it is, they're not as terrible. And all took ideas from the other. Liberal ideas entered the Christian and Social Democrat. If I look at the ideas of Christian Democrats in the 30s, 20s, and today, they all became rather liberal capitalist parties. And even the Social Democrats are far away of the ideas of the left. It's all very similar and therefore boring. If you don't see any difference in those political parties, why should you engage? I think that's one of the reasons. And of course, politicians who had the experience of the war and post-war times, as a rule, were stronger characters than those who grew up in wealth and peace and with no problems. Where I knew the politicians of different generations, and I see this difference. So the problem is we have no ideas, no new ideas. Now, in the United States too, I mean, it became a personal battle between Mr. Trump behaving like as he behaves and Mrs. Clinton, but not so much of ideas. Where is an idea? The last political idea which was new is now over half a century old. That was the Greens. Since then, nothing appeared. And then one element which is moving throughout the world, the students, for decades, was lamentably nationalism, sometimes by right, sometimes unbearable, but at least in Europe, nationalism comes now in a rather grotesque form back. But of course it is not the big patriotic national flame as we have known the last time during World War II in the resistance to the Nazis, where our flag, we really read around the flag. I remember the childhood stuff. It is all finished. And so I do think up to a certain degree policy and political interest dies on boredom. We don't know for what we should engage. And that's the problem. I don't see any new ideas. Maybe some of you know ideas who are not always a repetition of those we had in the 19th century. And that's a problem which I see all over the places. I mean, even in Russia, we have up to a certain degree a repetition of the 19th century fight between those Russians who wanted the orientation in Europe and those who had the Euro-Asian idea and so on. Nothing new.
So that's a very depressing point. Are we run out of ideas? I mean, I was sort of trying to hint to this with the hipster movement, which is also sort of ideologically empty. And always, all the way till now, we did have some movement, sometimes more clever, sometimes more stupid, but there was always a movement of revolt. Since the time of Aristotle, the youth were always revolting, and it doesn't seem for that to be the case. Is the lack of a driving idea the cause? Or, as Karel Schwarzenberg called it, the topic of boredom? Would you start? Whoever wants to start, we don't have to keep the order. Any thoughts?
I can agree with Mr. Schwarzenberg's words about the decay of parties, because you should see why Trump is so popular in America. Trump represents everything that politicians shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And he's popular only because people are so tired of politicians. And I don't know, if you look at Hillary Clinton, she's a perfect politician. Every word that comes out of her mouth has been tested on 5 focus groups, and she has hairdress, she has everything. She's just an ideal politician, but people are tired of seeing images of someone. They want to see somebody real, and somebody who says what he really thinks. And so, for some reasons, it turned out to be Trump, who thinks awful things and also says awful things, but he really does it. And we should find a way how to talk to people honestly, and that's what they want to. Because I've seen it even in Russia. Because Putin has always been given press conferences with people and journalists, and I watch it every time because I want to see what he looks like and what he's thinking about. And the last time he was talking to people, he wasn't like he used to be before. Like, he wasn't a robot. He was trying to talk to people about love and all the good stuff and talk to them in their language. And politicians are transforming a little bit, but we should be a little bit earlier than them. And we should try to stop the normal hypocrisy of politicians and just reach people, talk to people. The reason all of you should know Boris Nemtsov, who was murdered last year, and even though there were TV pieces that said that he's a murderer, a thief, and he's the reason why Russia is in decay, every time he went to people and talked to them, they were his fans immediately, because he knew how to do that, because he was speaking from his heart, and that's what we should do. And I think that is the answer.
Okay, so substitute the lack of topic by emotions?
Yes.
Okay, what do you think?
Well, I think that Donald Trump, Nicolás Maduro, Vladimir Putin, Fidel Castro are consequences of the deep anti-political feeling that has grown in the modern society. Since we born, we always listen to our parents saying that all the politicians are the same, something like the politics are dirty and nothing is going to change in the world. And that's why the worst people take the power. And we need to, the best one, take the power. Politicians take the more important decisions in our society. And that's why we need to, the best one, take the courage to be responsible on the politics. And I think this is a time of transition, you know. We are really close from past to this generation of Trump to the millennials to be into politics and to make real profound change in the modern world.
But what are the topics that interest the youth? What are the political topics that interest the youth?
Well, I think there are so many topics. It depends of the region. For example, in Latin America, maybe right now the principal topic is about democracy and liberty, because we have people like Evo Morales, Nicolás Maduro, and Fidel Castro. But maybe in other countries they have most modern discussions, like gay marriage, like legalization of drugs, and of course, what is the new model, the new economic model for the nation that are facing all these economical crises in the last few years. I think that are the topics that the young people need to hear about.
Yeah. Still haven't answered my question about the West becoming East-like and East becoming West-like.
It's only for 4 years.
Only, but this is, yeah, but you can see this also in, okay, fair enough. So the West is becoming East only for 4 years.
Yes.
Good answer, okay.
I don't know, I think it's just a moment, maybe you always, in the world we always have this debate between democracy, between liberty and with authoritarianism. I think this is a new chapter, but it's a lesson we have to learn. We never have to renounce to liberty. We never have to renounce to be involved in politics.
Mm-hmm. What is the Czech side think? If you want to talk about the topics that captivate European or Czech youth, now this is a situation where the enemy is quite clear. We do not have a clear enemy. It seems that we are being boiled like this frog that doesn't notice until the water is too hot to jump out. And also be interested about your answer to the question whether the East is becoming West or whether the West is becoming East, just briefly. And then we can go into the questions from the internet.
Actually, I don't know, I'm 23 years old.
Could anybody
22.
stop saying their age on this panel, please?
But I think that in the case of Czech Republic, there were important events, and it's 25 or 26 years old after, and I think that people are totally confused. They have no ideas. They don't know what is our goals, and they have. There is a lot of space for populists and so on, because they need something to catch or so on. And I think that a lot of people use this confused and this angst and so on, and I think that it's not so much good. I think that we need someone who don't use that we don't know what are our goals and so on. But I think that here is more populist people, or our leaders are populist. And I think it's a really big problem for us. Because we have everything. I have everything. I have a good family, I can travel, I have money, but maybe for a lot of young people it's supposed to be more confused, and they don't know what they want and what they have to do, what they want to study, where they want to work, and maybe it's a good space for populist idea or maybe extremist idea, and I think that it's a very big problem for my young generation.
Thank you.
Well, I have the impression that you speak of something which doesn't exist, because our demagogues and populists have no own ideas. They are not even extremists to the right or left, because they choose whatever they need, from right or left. I mean, especially in socialist literature, leftist literature was depicted the movement of Hitler as to the right. It was not at all so. Even Hitler himself wisely kept the name of the party, the German National Socialistic Workers' Party. And Mussolini is the same, who came even from the Social Democrats. Now, the real demagogues and populists choose from right and left whatever serves in the moment. The modern ones have even more newer methods. They read the polls, get analysis of the polls, and act according to the polls, which of course deteriorates all policy. So the problem is that they have no ideas. There are no ideas of our demagogues in politics. They are taking old ideas, recycling them in some way, but I never have heard of one of them who brought some new idea. I mean, good old Benito Mussolini at least had the idea of the cooperative state, which up to a certain degree lent from the church. We have not even this. We have no new ideas with our populists. If I look at Madame Le Pen or Mr. Strache in Austria or the AfD in Germany, they are recycling old ideas which I know, being an old man since 70 years already. There's nothing new. That is remarkable. And of course, Karl Marx, who was not a so good economist, was a really good historian, always said that the historical tragedies repeat themselves as a grotesque. And that's the case. Show me one of these new demagogues who are now moving Europe or even the United States, who had a new idea. Show me one of them. None of them. And that's it. There's a lack of new ideas.
Yeah. It also seems that this vacuum of lack of new ideas will always be filled by politicians when philosophers and people who can and should speak for the public, such as once, I don't know, Sartre or Foucault. In those situations, politicians are not so important because there's another ideal leader who comes up with new ideas and can come up with revolutions. It is only in the situations where the society is silent and the society itself does not know whether to go left or right, when the politician actually can harvest this energy and babble it away. Okay, anybody wants to react? Unless this is the case, we will go to the questions from the audience. I also believe that we have a microphone that is not attached to anything, thanks to the new wonders. And if there are questions, yeah, then wave at me. And now it's okay if we do very short answers because we have many questions. So, why do you think that young people are often subject to the insufficient levels of motivation to get engaged and become more publicly responsible? So why is it that people are so lame?
Because there are no ideas in the politicians. The politicians right now are not inspiring young people because the politics right now are less ideological and more pragmatic. And the young people need hope, need a vision of a country, a vision of a future. And right now, Donald Trump and all these kind of guys are not inspiring your people, are just talking about the worst in the human nature.
But why should the salvation come from the realms of politics? Why should the Messiah, the new person with new ideology, come from a small field of politics? And it's a very unfit field for original thinkers. We all know this. It's a very unfit for morally, well, let's say, people who are not ready to do compromises, which is something that you do have to do in politics. I mean, politics as an arena is not the most fertile ground for ideal leaders. It's a good ground for, I would say, I don't know, sort of the keepers of the system. But is it only into politics? How about music? How about philosophy? How about sociology? How about maybe Elon Musk as somebody who does digital technology? Maybe these people should or could become the leaders with new ideas in the future. Why are we thinking so much of politics? I mean, politics only gives so much power as we give it.
Of course, we have so many leaders in our society. We have Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and maybe some artists in the modern world. But I say before, the politicians take the most important decision in our society. That's why we need the young people to get involved in politics right now, and we need the young people to oppose all these kind of ideas of these Eastern leaders and like Latin American leaders like Nicolás Maduro, you know. We need young people to think about freedom and about future.
I can only agree with Jesus because, well, our forum is called the courage to take responsibility, and most of the people who are very famous musicians and all the youth admires them, they just don't want this responsibility. I have a friend who's a...
What responsibility is it exactly? Can you specify the responsibility? What do you mean by... I know the courage to take... What is it exactly, the responsibility part in our panel? What is it to you?
I can tell you about the responsibilities that opposition leaders should have took in 2011 and 2012 in Russia. They were thinking about whether to lead people on a real revolution to Kremlin walls, or whether to go to the government, talk to them, and then come to a decision and go on Bolotnaya Square. And they didn't take responsibility. Everybody went to Bolotnaya Square, and we didn't have no revolution. Everything ended, and now we have repressions. That was the courage to take responsibility. Nobody took it.
Okay. Right. Next question. I'm a PhD student in economics. Do you think you can get young people interested in the civil society through economics? Let's say that, let me rephrase the question maybe if I may, maybe economics was a big topic for us, for our generation, when we moved from communism to capitalism. The transformation was mainly an economic transformation. That's what we did, that's what we talked about, that's what was the reference points. Also, European Union is mainly founded by sort of, it's an economic union. The four movements that we have are primarily economic movements. The movement of people is movement of labor force. So to us, to our generation, I suppose this is what my colleague is implying, to my generation, the economic part meant a lot. Maybe today this is not really getting anybody's juicing flowing anymore.
I think, and Jesus from Venezuela will agree with me, that of course economics is a driver, because people in Russia live very poor, and they obviously want to stop living very poor and start living a little bit better. That is why economics is very important to them, and I think that that may be the only thing that's important for them.
Keep moving.
Okay. And we had, like, Putin became popular because we had 10 years of economical stability under his regime. And now, as the sanctions are used against our country, and as the Russian government wrote sanctions against us itself for some reason, people realize that their life have changed, and people realize that maybe this is the point where they should elect themselves a new president.
I'm totally agree, because right now in Venezuela the main topic is economics, because we have an humanitarian crisis. We have 17 million people who only eat 2 times a day, 5 million people who only eat 1 time a day. We have in Venezuela the highest inflation in all the world, and of course that we can motivate young people around the economic debate. Right now we have a debate in our country between the ideas from Marx and the libertarian ideas of Hayek, Milton Friedman, and we need, I think this debate can inspire so many young people in Venezuela and in all Latin America, maybe in all the world again.
Okay, we'll have a first question. Please be brief.
Yes, I'm actually not asking a question. I just want to make an observation as an American child of the 60s. So I can relate to Mr. Schwarzenberg perhaps in a different way than all of you. And what I want to say is that what I see in the work that I do is that the issue is, in my country, of what's happening is education, and it's also the supplanting of traditional education and the way that we learn and the way that we teach and the values that are conveyed by, it's been supplanted by the internet. And I love technology, and I think it brought the world together. And so when we talk about East versus West or who's what, it's actually we're heading into and should accept and embrace the concept of a global community where we all learn through education to interact without, and that when we talk about Mr. Trump, I'll just say that the populist movement that he has generated is one based in ignorance and the lies that have been perpetrated by the internet with complete abandon and the inability of uneducated people, particularly, to be able to know what is true and what is not.
Thank you very much from a nice view from across the Atlantic Sea.
I'm Odessa Primus. I've heard a lot of blame on the governments, which obviously it's where the problems are coming from, but usually...
Just briefly introduce yourself, darling, sorry.
Odessa Primus. I used to be a student recently.
Well, haven't we all?
Yes. I'm initiating a project with education because I find that the lack of politics in education is what's causing people not to vote and not to know how to vote. So my question is, don't you feel that as young people you should be trying to spread the knowledge of politics and knowledge of how to make change in your own generation within the young people so that they can hold their governments and so on accountable? Of course, it's difficult in countries like Venezuela and Russia, but always the change usually comes from the people, unless America comes sweeping in to save the day or something.
Thank you. Yes, anybody wants to take that?
You should understand that every time I try to involve my former classmates into politics, they tell me, Polina, just shut up, we're sick of your stuff, just let's talk about music. But we've done a great job involving young people in politics, and we'll continue to do so. But as I said, a new politician should be honest. And when I'm promising people something, I should believe that that will happen. And it's not only lack of ideas, as Mr. Schwarzenberg said, it's also a lack of hope in Russia, for one, because I cannot lead people to make a revolution without believing that this revolution will happen, and I don't believe that it will happen. And I don't see now how the system will change. I mean, I can understand that it will happen sometime, like Putin will retire or he'll die, and then will be...
Or not.
Please don't ruin my plans.
The advancements in nanotechnology and medicine are going at a tremendous pace. You know, maybe 20 years from now we will invent immortality.
I think people told the same things about Stalin.
And Lenin.
Sure, but well, you mentioned Lenin, and the point is that opposition in Russia should find a way of saying something really catchy, like all the fabrics to workers, without telling a lie.
Philosophers have discovered that catchy and truthful is a empty set very often. Okay, we have a next question.
Good morning, my name is Katerina Ryslova, I'm from Czech Republic, and I'm representing the new youth global movement called We Unify. We just created a chapter here in Czech Republic, and we are trying to motivate young people to take part in politics and in social life. And I face lots of issues today with the passivity and negativity of Czech people who don't really want to be involved in politics. But what is my point is that lots of people like you are blaming young people, that we are like, don't go voting, that it's our responsibility, that we let old people to decide about Brexit, for example. But I think that it's also a problem of whole society, because we are not motivated by our politicians. We are not motivated by our parents, who are passive as well here, who don't go vote or vote Communist Party still. Yeah. And we are also not motivated by our education system, which is really bad. I mean, which is still an old kind of communist way here, and we are not given freedom to talk, to think critically, to have media literacy. These are important skills we need nowadays, but we are not taught them, and we are pushed by our teachers not to speak, be passive. So I think that what we can do is to be motivated by people like you, by speakers, by people from academic sphere, who really need to encourage young women, young men to talk, to be themselves, and to tell them that it's your future. You need to take concrete steps, and you need to join students group. You need to join. You need to volunteer. You need to join our global movement, We Unify, and organize events in your localities. Join political parties, because I think that our political parties in Czech Republic have problem because they don't have young people's representation, and we just don't care. So what can we do with that? I mean, how we can tackle these issues about education in Czech Republic, which our politicians are not listening to us, are not listening to youth organizations I'm representing in Czech Republic. Okay. How can we ask them? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's take 2 more questions so that we have 3. So it's going to be, you can choose your answer, please.
Thank you. My name is Anna Jordanova. I'm a student as well. I will be really short. I'm a bit sad because you, Mr. Schwarzenberg, you were our star during the last presidential elections, and we are very happy we have someone like you. And now you are saying we students are not active and we are not interesting and other things. Please just look how many students and young people is now in this room and how many of delegates is now here. There are empty chairs in comparison to yesterday evening. The room here is full of persons. Now you are talking about the future, about us, and how many of delegates is there discussing our topic? We are active. We are interested in different things because we are disgusted, of course. Just think this way, please.
Okay, very good point.
Yeah, my name is Jassim. I'm from Bahrain. I'm near Dubai, really. I have 2 questions. One is, what are the views of the young leaders with regards to immigrants coming to Europe, especially from Syria? That's one. And the other one, do young leaders really see Brexit of the UK as a threat to democracy? Thank you.
So now a quick one. Okay, if anybody wants to react, we have 3 sets of questions.
I want to react.
The last was more specific, but anything was relevant. There was a complaint that young people actually are interested and they are active.
I want to react to Katerina's question. If they don't listen to you, you have to take action. If the status quo don't want to change, you have to change the status quo. You can sit and wait for the politicians to change the world. You have to get involved and to be part of this movement of innovation, this movement of hope that have to build the future. You don't have to wait. You have to take actions to change the world.
This is exactly how all of us got on this stage. I wanted to say that, well, going back to Katerina's topic, what concerns the youth in Russia is mostly freedom of speech on the internet. And we're trying to involve people in our political movement by offering them human rights projects that defend their right for freedom of speech on the internet. We always protect, well, we have a point in criminal case or in criminal code in Russia which prosecutes people for their words on the internet, on newspaper, on air, everywhere. And so we offer them free legal support and we get them out of prisons, and that is how young people know about Open Russia and about what we do in political field. And some of them get involved, and the last time we've helped somebody, it was a really famous blogger with a lot of followers, and so when he's finally out of his case, I think that we'll work with him together, and he may help us involve more young people into politics. And speaking about Brexit, I think Brexit was not a threat to democracy, because Brexit was a perfect example of how a politician could lose a vote and how he could lose a referendum. And for someone from Russia, that sounds nearly impossible, but that happened, and that's exactly how democracy works. And of course, it may produce some mistakes, or maybe future will show us that Brexit was a good thing. But anyway, it happened because people voted so. People who were responsible voted so. And that's a really important matter.
All right. More questions? 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Franz Brüller, I work for the Erste Foundation in Vienna. I would be not so pessimistic about the engagements of young people. I think we see a lot of engagement in very concrete issues. And this may not be directly in politics, but it is in all sorts of civil society activities. I mean, the refugee crisis, if you like that word, last year was a typical example. People began to spontaneously organize themselves, and it was young people, it was students who revolutionized in a way what civil society was doing about it. They began to use the current possibilities of internet, of social media, to organize support, to organize help, to organize shelters for refugees in Austria. I saw people here on the train station at Hlavní nádraží in Prague receiving refugees. It was young people who stood at the perron and waited for refugees to come out of the trains, to help them, to guide them, to direct them. So these were young people getting organized, self-organization. And I think today a lot of young people who may have gone into politics in the past are now doing social businesses. They start concrete social businesses to address a concrete social need, a concrete social problem. It may be interpreted as the final triumph of capitalism, that they don't go into politics, but they go into business. But at least with business, they try to address social issues, no longer going into business for profit motives so much than for social change, for social progress. And I think this is today's new field of young people's activities, and I don't know if that's your experience as well as young leaders, but I have hope, and I'm optimistic in that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Please, sir.
Good morning, Adam Bralczyk. I'm a public servant in Poland. Should young people change their reality and fight on their own, can't 20 years old cooperate with 40 years old and 60 years old? Why draw lines?
And the third question?
Is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Mohammed, I'm from Syria, and my question would be to Paulina. I mean, I don't know if it's a question, but I mean, we were not like politically active. We didn't even have that field to be active in Syria, and when we wanted to change, we were experiencing what is being called now the civil war, which originally started as a revolution, as we can refer to it. But then, like, now it ended up as a civil war, and the whole world is not able to solve it. I mean, aren't you afraid to have something similar to Russia? I mean, well, maybe it's not so probable to happen, but I mean, I can see the same if like a real revolution is going to happen in Russia.
Revolution often happen to lead to civil wars, which already happened in Russia. After the Bolsheviks came to power, it's happening in Ukraine, it happens in Syria. And if somebody leads Russian people to a revolution, that's a risk that a leader should take, and that's the risk that all of the people who are willing to do a revolution should take. Mostly, this is why Russian people don't want the revolution. We already had like plenty of them, and none of it turned out to be well. And I'm not campaigning for revolution, of course, because I just don't want people to die. And I hope that revolution will happen and open Russia, and all of our colleagues from democratic parties work on a plan how to transit power without blood.
It's actually interesting. I was thinking about the revolutions because we are coming up to a celebration soon, and it really dawned on me that there really never was an anti-communist revolution in Russia.
It wasn't. I mean,
it just sort of fell
communist regime,
apart.
yes, fell itself.
Yeah, unlike here where we had to at least exert some effort. There was, of course, bloodshed, but there was no deaths.
This is why we don't have like proper democracy, because all of the European countries and nations fought for their rights and fought for their democracy, and our democracy just fell on our heads somehow, and it fell on our heads with a huge economical crisis. And while we have real freedom of speech, we had Russia was a very free nation in the 90s, but we also had no money, and half the country lost its jobs, we had default, and it was terrible. And like half of Russians, I mean, even more than half of Russians, not people who are from the intelligence, intelligentsia, hate the 90s, hate Yeltsin, and they were really grateful for Putin to finally stabilizing the system.
Now, the word democracy, how does that sound in Russia, the word democratization? Is that a positive word or a negative word?
Now it's a neutral word, and we are using it because it's really neutral. All the propaganda of last years was against liberals, and so we gave up the word liberals, and now we're Democrats.
Okay, so Democrats is okay?
I mean, yes, it is.
Okay, so we have 3 questions, or 2 other questions. One is sort of, if I may, so politics not being the only way through which young people can influence the world, but maybe in your case, yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, and also it's coming back to this: why are we always expecting that the Messiah will come from the realm of politics? I mean, what can the young people do outside of politics? We can see that this is also a topic that Václav Havel had, the open society, and we can see that very many things we only think we need the politicians, and this is also sort of an impression that they would like to have, that we can't even sneeze without a politician. But Prague's becoming alive exactly because in the recent 3 years it really went from the bottom up. Right.
I don't think the problem is that we are accepting Messiah. That's not the problem. What we need is the daily work, which is sometimes boring, sometimes difficult, but we have to work to get the world better. And some problems can be solved only by politics, in political decisions, be it legislating, be other things. They can't be solved only by economic means or other. Some problems have to be solved politically, and I don't expect, too old for that, that the new Messiah comes and a big leader who solves everything. There's no such thing. But what we need, a lot of people who work for it. You know the Czech saying, "Masrekova dobrá práce." That's missing all over the world. We should work on the small changes. And instead of being effective in small changes, we let the develop into a crisis, and we make silly decisions, thinking that will solve the problem. Typical was with the Brexit, where there were, of course, problems between Brussels and Britain, a lot of them. But nobody tried to solve these problems one after the other. Till it ended in an explosion.
Would anybody of you like to react?
Every time Mr. Schwarzenberg says things, I just don't know what to say because I totally agree with all of things he said.
Okay, but where's the person with ideas? I mean, to me, as you said, our Polish colleague introduced himself as a public servant. Of course, he's a public servant, but even a minister comes from the Latin word ministrare, which is to serve. And I think the role of a politician is to make happen something that is an idea which is not necessarily his. Where will the ideas come from? We haven't heard anything really new, as you yourself pointed out. We haven't had really anything new from the side of politics. Who will be the one who comes up with something that will actually make people interested? When I was talking with an old school person from Silicon Valley, American, he was telling me, you know, when we were young, we were crazy about technology, and when we needed money, we established some sort of application or something, and then we sold it and we got the money. We didn't care for the money. We were there to build a super machine that could, read human speech. And we always established startups as a sort of a secondary or tertiary. Nobody was really interested in the money. We were interested in the idea. Money was secondary. It seems to me that the youth of today is interested in the money no matter what the idea is. How is that? When it comes to, so there is no, what I'm trying, maybe Messiah wasn't the right word, but there is no zest. There is, and even in your situation, your dream is like it was our dream here 30 years ago, to have a standard Western, democratic, responsible and transparent government that actually listens to the people and doesn't bully them. But once we have it, it seems to me that we are in sort of a post-coitum depression that we now have it, and this is also something that Havel talked about, that freedom is not the goal, that freedom is the beginning. It is not freedom from, it is freedom to. And we don't know, my feeling is, as something between young and old, that we don't know what to use this freedom for. So anyway, maybe...
So you're advising us to stop our fight for freedom in Russia?
Well, we now are
maybe that is a good thing.
Reverting to non-political politics. We're now reverting to young people being impressive in technologies, being impressive in the way they build their cafeteria, but you really don't see too much young energy in politics coming up with new ideas, if I may sort of put all of our concerns together.
Yes, of course. I think we need more dreamers and less pragmatic people. We need people who compromise with idea, with convictions. And I think it's not only in politics. You show us an example in the technology that people only want money, no are in love too much with the machines and innovation. I don't know what this is happening right now, but I think we are really close to a break point, and we're going to have all these dreamers again, and the hope is going to be in our planet again. I think the reverence of the youth people it's really close in our society, you know. It's just a transition time.
Okay. But what are your post-coup dreams? What comes after Putin?
After Putin, I delete my lawyer's number from my phone.
Your number is available? Your phone number is available? Is that what you said?
No, I delete my lawyer's number from my phone.
Okay, I misunderstood.
But, well, I have so many plans on a world without Putin. Like, we should rebuild. I mean, when Putin goes away, I want to become head of all the prisons in Russia. Yes.
You'll be releasing the political prisoners?
Releasing the political prisoners and rebuilding the system that punishes people for their crimes, not tries to get them socialized and ready to go back to society. And I don't know, maybe in Western democracies you have a lack of ideas, but in Russia the idea is very simple. Please leave people alone and let them live their lives for like 10 years or maybe 20 years.
How is Zhirinovsky doing, by the way?
He's all right.
Is he still around?
He is in the parliament, sure, of course.
And what's his support?
It's not that much. His party, which is called for some reason Liberal Democracy Party, and also Communist gained pretty the same percentage, and it was of course a protest vote against United Russia, and it was something like 17%. But we were running in a district as like one district candidate, and we beat his party in our district.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. We're better than Zhirinovsky.
Did the district get banned? No, joke. Okay, okay. Let's say that your dream is to make your country standard Western type, because this is also
I don't want to be my country the standard Western type, because I see all the problems that Europe has and that America has, and we should learn from their mistakes.
What are you learning?
I should think about how to spell it with nobody hating me afterwards, but.
Speak openly. We are very tolerant people.
Okay, I'm not Donald Trump.
1621.
But
so, you can insult us any way you like it.
For example, American and European tolerance grew to be something very absurd, because people now can't speak their mind without being accused of being a fascist, or in some European countries there are also laws that prosecute people for their words, and I say that when when person thinks and says something awful, he may say it and he may think of it whatever he likes without like doing something awful.
So denial of Holocaust, or like they have it in America, that you're actually able to have openly Nazi views, but in Europe this is not allowed. You would change that to the American way?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
I think that people who say like nasty things demonstrate how stupid they are without getting government involved.
Because I think one of the things that the world expected a little bit from the Central and Eastern Europe from after the Communist Revolution is to come up with something new, which we didn't. We really just photocopied, copy-pasted the Western style of democracy and the Western style of capitalism, which I think is kind of okay, but there was, I felt this silent hope that maybe there will come something, etwas Neues, really something new, and it didn't come. Because there was a tremendous opportunity to, and Havel talked about this, but only in terms of some sort of very vague visions in the beginning that we should have a non-political politics and non-party politics, but none of that actually worked, and it all succumbed to being a very, we should be very happy for it, but still, the higher dream, the expectation from the West that something novel will come out really didn't so much materialize.
Maybe we should try another planet.
There is Mars up in order in 20 years. Start all over again?
Okay, I think that right now we have to focus in our country in 3 specific points: to win freedom, to defend the human dignity, and of course to end poverty. And in this, while we work in this, we have to find some other goals into our society, because I like the Western lifestyle, but I think that the capitalism, the free market economy, needs right now more solidarity, and needs to have so much human goals, so much I think so much rethinking this economic model, and to be a greater model, not only money for money, you know?
That's true.
Any thoughts here how the society should look like? Or otherwise, if we don't sort of manage it, it will do it itself. One way or another, the society is going to change. How would you, if you could dream as freely as you wish, how would you like to see Czech Republic and Europe, if you feel like talking about the whole of Europe, in 20 years?
20 years? I don't know. I think that a lot of young people want to do something. For example, in my...
But what? What is the something?
For example, help people. In my project from the competition People in Need, I try to focus on old people, and through the volunteers I want to help to old people. And in my town or in my city is a lot of young people around 15 years old that they want to help too. But why? They can go to party or something, but they want to help to old people, and I think that it's really good.
Okay, a society that helps old people and respects old people.
I think
What next?
I think it's good start for me.
That's all. The only change that you expect.
Not only old people,
so
but
let it go, let it loose. We all hear nice.
Okay, to other groups, to be active, to talk talk about not so much nice theme, not only about bloggers and vloggers and so on, but talk about politics, talk about things that I don't like and so on. And I think that to be 15 years old, young boy or girls is really hard, but when they have some leader, maybe me in my project, it's really good.
Yeah, but the leaders of, if I may, from what I see, I have a 9-year-old son, so you know it's much younger. But I have noticed this blogger YouTube phenomenon. The most famous Czech song that ever was written is not Dvořák and it's not Karel Gott and it's nothing of the kind. It's Misha, who has 33 million views in a week. Karel Gott with his Když muž se ženou snídá has 9 million in all, I don't know how many, 10,000s of years. So you have these bloggers like Fatty Pillow, like Misha Vyšílenosti, who are becoming voices of this new generation, but it's all very sort of dull. It's like a normalization going on spontaneously. What do you say about that? What do you say about how are you going to deal with these leaders? I mean, it's all nice that we do what we do here in Forum 2000, but we're never ever going to get anywhere near 10,000 followers.
I know, but I think that among these leaders can be someone who try to focus on politics, and I think that some of these bloggers or vloggers try to put this political theme to their vlogs, and I think that is a good way how to communicate with these young people, because they are individuals, they want everything, and I think that to say vote one political party is really dangerous for them. But when we want to learn how to communicate with these people during these vlogs or blogs, it's good. I think that is a good way, and when more bloggers understand that politics is not something bad, or
How do you use social media, and how do you use humor? Because this is also something that we are running very low and scarce in these free times with politics that are making running joke on their own selves. It's kind of difficult to run a parody on them. But how do you use the whole idea of the joke and parody and sort of this trickster figure? And how do you use social media? Is it much use, or do you have trouble with it?
Going a little bit to YouTube bloggers, as I've said, we've realized that problem, and we just got one of them out of prison. And you know why he went to prison? That's extremely funny thing. He went to prison for catching Pokemons in a church.
In a church?
Yes.
Nice.
And about social networks.
You can go to prison for that?
Yes.
And what happened to the Pokemons?
I think FSB trains them while you're in a prison.
Okay, very good.
So, talking about social networks, the reason why I work with Open Russia, the reason why we got this YouTube blogger out of prison, the reason why I'm sitting here is because 4 years ago I've decided it would be funny to run a Twitter. And, well, social networks brought me where I stand, and of course I know how to use it, and we should make jokes, because everybody's sick and tired of dull politicians that only say that what they need to say and what focus groups approve. And, but in Russian Twitter society, you can see that, like, every time something terrible happens, like Navalny makes another investigation about, I don't know, president's friends killing innocent children and women and stuff. Everybody's making many very, very funny jokes about it on Twitter, and then nothing happens. Like, we have like Special Olympics and joking on Twitter, and then we have another theme, so everybody's joking on something else, and then it just goes this way for the past 3 years. And everybody's tired of joking too now. Everybody's tired of everything. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a feeling that I have here often too. We're tired of being the good guy without really actually ever being the good guy. But there is certain tiredness in tolerance. There is certain tiredness in democracy. There's also certain tiredness in patience.
Of course. Social media in Venezuela is really important because we don't have access to TV station. The opposition don't have access to the regular media. But I think the social media, it's not everything. The politician has to be on the street, has to be face to face with the people to listen to them. Because when you only talk with the people through your smartphone, through Twitter, Facebook, you sometimes lose the real perception of the reality. That's why you need to you have to combine the social media and the face-to-face activism.
Good combination. How about real experience with social media and young people and this sort of face-to-face imperative to be there?
It is a new instrument. One speaks about it that it will be an independent entity, but it is an instrument like newspapers, like radio, like television. And there are some who learn to use it and some who didn't learn it. The problem of the social media is that whereas it's rather expensive to publish different nonsense in newspapers or bring it to television. In social media, it's very easy. So, I mean, the problem with social media is too much useless information, and the spam of comments which make no sense and are really silly. That's the real problem of the social media. And therefore, I do think they have in reality, everybody reads it, but it has limited influence. But of course, it's remarkable how much hatred sometimes appears. Some voices in the social media are really especially disgusting, but that's the only way they can appear, and therefore it's really a great temptation for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so any other questions that we have? Yes? 1, 2. Thank you very much. Please.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Carlota. I'm from United Nations Student Association in Spain. And I wonder one thing, which is...
Closer.
Yeah, thank you. So, it is necessary a change, and we're talking about responsibility, and I completely agree with it. But I have a question, that when we try to do a real global change in everything, we need each sector to take responsibility, not just the government, also the private sector, also the NGOs, also the innovation part, everything. So my question is, how are you planning, or even though are you thinking to plan or to do something to put all of this sector to cooperate together, and how will be the best way to approach it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last question from the lady right there, and then we have to close in 3 minutes, so just last statements, really, please.
Yeah, hello, my name is Eliška Adamcová. I'm from Czech Republic, and my question is, we've talked about politics here, but it seems to me that what we face a lot is also the corporations and the influence of big companies that are nowadays very much connected with politics. And I guess in Western world, our fight is not that much maybe against politics. We do not see them as enemies, but it is these huge corporations and people who stand up against the system, just like, I don't know, Aaron Schwartz or Snowden. These people were smashed by a system that was not actually a political system. And I think that today, this is very, very complicated, and it's hard to see into it. I can understand politics. When I try to fight politics, it's something clear.
Yeah.
And it can be also very expensive for young people to stand against these systems.
So the totalitarianism in the West, be it political or economic, or other structures such as in this case, Secret Service. So, and also please, my dear guests, connect this in a most elegant way with a closing statement, if you don't mind. So shall we run it? Shall we run it? Do you want to go first?
No, I can wait.
Okay.
All right, okay.
Well,
she's patient.
I think, of course, we have to have these integrate visions between civil society, the private sector, like the entrepreneurs, and of course the government. If we don't work together, we can achieve a real democracy. The only way to have progress in a society is that the civil society press the politicians to be more transparent and to achieve the goals that they promise. And the only real engine for the economics in a country is the private sector. The politician has to do what the politician has to do. The enterprise has to do what the enterprise has to do. You can, but they have to make this a teamwork, you know. And
yeah.
Yes, I like.
We're running out of time.
Yes, I like the first question very much, because that's what we explain to people while campaigning for state parliament in Russia when they asked us to fix something in their yard. We told people that they should take responsibility for their yard and for what surrounds them. And we have a crisis of ideas. We have everybody tired of politicians, of politics, of revolutions and stuff. But every single person, for one, knows what he needs to improve his life. And he may find out what his neighbors need to improve their lives. And together, they should make a little change in where they live. And if you don't trust a politician, take responsibility. Be a politician yourself. Do it yourself. With us. Of course.
Nice, please. Closing statement, your message to the world.
My message to the world.
In 50 seconds.
I don't know, I believe in my young generation. I think that there's a lot of people who talk with young people real good and believe in things like be transparency, don't do politics for own goals and so on. And I think that thanks the competition people in need, I know that there's a lot of people, young people, who think same like me, and I think that we are on a good way.
Well, fingers crossed for you. Mr. Schwarzenberg.
I have no final statement because, I mean, it's a panel of the young people and I think they should make the statement. I put all the questions with the orders present.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So with that, I really salute your work. I have huge respect for what you are doing, and I really am happy that if Forum 2000 can at least a little bit boost you and give you the firm belief that there is people like us ready to help in any way that we can, then we, I think, have achieved our goal. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much. We have ended sharp at 11:30, for which I take huge credit, but most of it actually goes to you. I need all of you to evacuate the room, and I'm sorry, only people who will be able to stay here, other people are hiding beneath the chairs. Otherwise, everybody has to go. Sorry for that. Thank you very much for coming, and let's hope that the hope that we have in the new generations is something that will flourish. Thank you very much.